I mean, if you look at each position room specifically, because Tennessee's only made 2 additions, they've lost a couple of players, you can make the case that, well, is this position room better or worse than it was in 2024? A lot of them will seem, it's probably worse. But Brent, kind of going position room by position room, how does Tennessee feel about the guys in the room right now? Like, you're going to, running back, for example, you're losing Dylan Sampson. Huge loss, okay?
Right.
But they like Peyton Lewis. They believe in Deshaun Bishop. They like the 2 incoming freshmen. They need to see somebody emerge. We'll see if they get another guy out of the portal. But, sure, you're losing Sampson, but you like what you have in that room.
Well, I mean, I think a couple of things here. One, no coach ever thinks he has enough depth. I don't care who you ask. You can get. I mean, somebody can have 5 returning All-Americans on the offensive line, and they're going to tell you they don't have enough. They don't have enough bodies. They don't have enough talent. They got to go get more. So I think you're going to find that if you talk to a coach, you're going to find that across the board with everything. I do think they like Peyton Lewis. If you're talking about that, I think there's nothing to dislike about Deshaun Bishop other than can he stay healthy. Here's the other thing too, Rob and all you guys. When you look at it, I mean, what's been the mainstay of Tennessee's offense? The gnashing of the teeth about the offense the last 2 years has been lack of explosive plays. It hasn't been running the football. There's been no question about this team being able to run the football. So I think that there's some confidence in your running back room and your confidence in the ground game, even with all the changes that are coming, because schematically, regardless of who the people are, you've been able to run the football.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that part of it, you probably go into to the spring if you're a Tennessee fan or if you follow this team, you're a coach going, well, you know what? We'll be able to run the football. Maybe not as great. It may not be all one guy like it was with Sampson, but we're going to be able to run the football because you run for 2,500 yards or more basically every year Josh Heupel's been the head coach at Tennessee.
I don't have anything to add other than to say I think that's one of the, under scrutinized or less publicized things about this offense is the numbers they put up on the ground game without, superstars. I mean, Dylan Sampson obviously put up huge numbers, but Tennessee been doing that for 3 years, without having, the SEC Offensive Player of the Year running back.
4-year stretch of Tennessee rushing for over 2,500 yards, never been done in program history. Of course, Tennessee this past year, and second most in the modern era, most since 1951 at 2,900, whatever it was.
Yeah, and not just talented back. I mean, other than Darnell, I mean, you're not talking about a lot of blue chip offensive, NFL offensive linemen either.
Yeah. This scheme allows you to run it. That's for sure. Look at tight end Austin and feel good about the tight end room. Holden Staves is a fine player. He played a lot, but you bring back Miles Kitselman, who was your clear cut guy, and everybody wants to see Ethan Davis play more, and he's got the highest ceiling in the room for sure, and he's going to play more this year. I think everybody feels good about the tight end room heading into spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you got the 2 early enrollees. They'll be here. You have Cole Harrison in year 2. And they talk about Cole Harrison in a similar way that they did Miles Kitselman, liked him late in the process, got here, realized he's better than they realized, And so, what is he? I mean, everybody's going to go naturally move to Brame and Van Doorslayer. But, I think Cole Harrison has done enough, in practice to, maybe, push himself in there, for some playing time in year 2. We'll see. Again, we'll see if those freshmen can get past him. But you're right. I mean, this is a room that it has some depth to it. And, because of the young talent that you do have, you're going to have to figure out which one you like and probably push them into some playing time situations because, as we all know, holding on to players that don't play is way more harder than it used to be. So, I think for Alec Ablin, he's got some veterans. He got the guy that he loves the most, which is Miles Kitselman, back for another year when, 3 months ago, they didn't think any chance of that happening. And, that's a huge boost to the room. And you're right, Ethan Davis will get a lot more opportunities, has higher upside, just has to continue to develop and build off what he did this past year.
Of course, they want the ability to go 12 personnel, don't want to live in 12 personnel, but obviously this past year, ran it quite a bit. They haven't been able to do that as much as they want to in years prior because they only had 2 tight ends they played. They didn't have confidence in that third tight end that's needed if you're playing 2 tight ends a lot. So obviously that's something that Tennessee hopes they can continue to do with the depth at tight end. Let's go to quarterback. Rob, obviously Nico, first-year starter, had some highs, had some lows, had a lot of learning experiences. got better as the year progressed. I thought that he was a much better football player towards the end. Everybody knows he's got to take a step. Okay, he's got to take a step. It's the nature of the beast. But you got Nico there, and you have a returning starting quarterback in the SEC. That's a good thing. Behind him, you got Jake Merklinger, who's had a year in the system. You add George McIntyre as an early enrollee. Nice little quarterback room, but obviously everybody's going to need all three of those guys to take a step this spring, not just Nico. Those backups have got to take a step. Gaston Moore's not on this roster anymore. And
no gas pipe.
Yeah, no gas pipe. Obviously, he's a guy that can go in there and coast and kind of win you a game against Mississippi State. But those backups got to take a step as well.
Well, last year, or last couple of years, really. I guess it hasn't been an ideal situation at quarterback, and still maybe not with the youth. But you got three guys that you feel good about. You don't have anybody that you took just to take a guy. To have a room. You got three scholarship quarterbacks that you recruited, you liked a lot coming out of high school. So I think it has evolved to look like a SEC quarterback room now. And you're right. The biggest thing probably going on in that program right now, forget you can gnash your teeth over the transfers out or what they're getting out of the portal. The biggest deal is Nico going to take a step, and if he does, I think he can elevate everybody around him. If he doesn't, it's going to be maybe a grind.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Nico from a take a step standpoint is just where's his leadership? Because this is truly his offense. Whereas a year ago, last fall you had Cooper Mays, vocal guy who played a ton, who Nico admittedly was helping him with some things and was helping him as a leader with some stuff up front. And you had Dylan Sampson, who we all have seen, right? Now, Austin, it's all the circle everybody up, and he's kind of the vocal one, and he's the rah-rah guy on pregame and all that stuff. Right now, all eyes more than ever are focused on Nico. And it's not just a focus on him to say, how's the young guy going to play? It's now a focus on him on how's he going to run his offense? How's he going to lead his offense? Because this offense falls squarely on his shoulders from a leadership standpoint, in my opinion. I don't think there's anybody else out there to really compliment him or be the leader over him or have a big voice. To me, he is the voice of this offense. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's what it feels like to me, Austin.
Yeah, I agree, and it should be that way. He needs to want to be the guy that is in the middle of the huddle, getting this team fired up. He needs to be the Drew Brees pregame speech guy that we saw from Brees for years. That I know that's not necessarily in his demeanor, but at some point you have to just say, okay, I'm forcing this round peg into a square hole. I am going to be that guy because I have to be. And so, I think that you're right. The leadership part of this component, and then just how he processes it all. I think his processing has to be faster in year two than it was this past year. And everybody sees the flashes. When he flashes big, and so he's got to flash just more consistently, flash bigger a year from now. And if he does that, then it takes pressure off of all the other components, both on the offense and on the defense.
It's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that in terms of leadership on that side of the football, for next year. You'll have guys emerge. That happens every single year, and that's a good thing. But, right now, there are no holdovers outside of your quarterback in terms of in that leadership spot. That's something to pay attention to this spring for sure. A year
ago, you had Brew.
Right.
You had Cooper Mays. You had Dylan Sampson. Three guys that were established at every level. And I don't even count the tight ends, where I think Stays and Kitzelman are older guys and could do it. That could just, on a whim, snap a finger, be, the guy that everybody looks to. Who's that guy next year besides the quarterback?
Yeah, who's the alpha?
There's nobody at running back that makes me think, oh, yeah, he's going to do that. There's nobody at receiver that makes me think, oh, yeah, he's going to do that. Kitzelman maybe can help him. But on the offensive line, again, who would that be? And so it's got to be number 8.
Yeah, it's got to be for sure. Another set that he's got to take this spring. On that note, let's go to wide receiver, and that's, wide receiver has been one of those big talking points this offseason. You've lost a lot. Graduation, you've lost Brew McCoy, you've lost Dante Thornton. To the transfer portal, you've lost Chaz Nimrod, Squirrel White, Caleb Webb, Nathan Leacock, Nate Spillman. You've lost a lot of numbers that you brought in Amari Jefferson. You're adding Travis Smith, and Darius Jackson and Joakim Dotson. Still need to add one or two before it's all said and done. Numbers-wise, I think if they add one more, then they're back to where they were numbers-wise for the 23 season. But nonetheless, Brent, that biggest question about this offense this spring is what does the wide receiver room look like? Guys got to step up. They got to find some rhythm there, and we don't have those answers right now, obviously.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, you have no choice but to embrace youth. If you're a Tennessee coach, if you're an offensive coach, there is no we're going to go out and get 12 portal guys to become a veteran offense all of a sudden. Like, you're going to be young at receiver. Even if you go get another guy, AP, you're still going to be young at receiver. Okay? I mean, so year 2, Mike Matthews, what does he look like? Year 2, Chris Brazzell, what does he look like? Can you get Travis Smith on the field as a freshman? What do those guys look like?
What do you have in Amari Jefferson?
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is there's no way to avoid being young. Okay? It's just not going to happen. You're not going to line up with a bunch of guys where you go, I know that they know what they're supposed to do on every play, and they understand every choice route and everything we're doing and this, that, and the other. You got to get them ready, okay? And so sometimes it's not the worst thing in the world, right, when you're forced to go that direction. We'll see how this coaching staff responds to it because they're just going to be young. Do they have some talent? I believe they do have talent. I believe Mike Matthews can play. I think there's a reason why everybody wanted Amari Jefferson coming out of high school. Chris Brazzell, I don't care what anybody says. Chris Brazzell caught a bunch of balls and had a bunch of yards at Tulane. Like, it's there, okay? He didn't do it against just the Sisters of the Poor. It's like you got to get it out of them. And so I'm curious to see what that group looks like and what they get done over the next couple of months heading into spring practice. Because you're not waiting on somebody to ride in on the white horse to save the day who's, a super senior, who's an All-American that is a projected first-round draft pick, right? I mean, that's not what's going to happen here. So you got to go get those guys ready starting next week when they come to town.
And figuring out, like Austin said, what do you have in Amari Jefferson? Where can you place him? These 3 incoming freshmen. Dotson's kind of a slot, but can anybody else play a slot? Do you look better in this system? Here or there. I mean, those are some questions you got to answer this offseason. I think Mike Matthews has got to be the alpha in that room, though, right? I mean, he's still a younger guy. He's going to be a sophomore, but talking about leadership and all that. Now, obviously, his skill set is, the sky's the limit there. He's got to find some consistent production, but I think this has an opportunity to be Mike Matthews' room, right?
I think what's going to be – I don't think it's anybody's room for a while. I think the question is who can go out and be productive day in and day out and take the leadership reins from from their work ethic standpoint. I think it's a real mistake if you're a young guy and you walk into that room next week and you declare it yours. And not that Mike's going to do that. I think that one, unlike Nico, who should come in and have a team meeting next week with his offensive guys – I think that receiver room is you got to earn your way in that by what you get done over the course of the next 2 or 3 months before you can become the alpha in that group. I don't know who the alpha is going to be, but that has to be, to me, Austin and Rob, that has to be an earned spot more so than it is somebody just declaring that they're the guy because they're in their second year or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a vocal leader amongst that group. So I don't know if anybody can just, production and all that, you could end up being Mike's room because he's, arguably the most talented and explosive player in the room. But, as far as him, being able to pull guys aside, I don't see that out of him. Just like I'm not sure I see it out of anybody in that room as of right now.
Well, and you don't have to be, Rob, if your quarterback's a really good player and your quarterback's a good leader. I don't think Cedric Tillman was the most vocal guy in 22 before he got hurt. I certainly don't think Ramel Keaton was that guy. Jalen Hyatt, that's not natural for him. The leader of that receiver group was a guy named Hendon Hooker. Good quarterbacks lead their receivers. And I think that's, again, why so many eyes are going to be on Nico and his leadership.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think very often. You might have a wide receiver who's a complementary leader on your offense, but, by and large, it better, in most cases, be your quarterback.
Particularly if he's a returning starter.
Oh, put an asterisk on it.
Go to the offensive line, much like receiver, a lot of questions about this group up front, losing Cooper Mays. losing your right tackles. We'll see what's in store for Andre Carrick. You're losing Javonte Spraggins. The potential's there to lose 4 starters, okay, out of 5. Bringing back Lance Hurd. You brought in 1 via the transfer portal and Wendell Moy. You're bringing in 1 that you think is going to play and a 5-star plus, David Sanders, if he continues to come along. Austin, a lot of questions, a lot of newness up front, but again, I feel like it's a group that, push comes to shove, you got to decide to play some of these guys. I understand that, but there's a lot of options they like, but there's more to it than just liking them. They got to move forward with them, and I think this year is obviously that year.
Forced change, and that's what it boils down to. I mean, like Cooper's eligibility is gone, Spraggins' eligibility is gone. We'll see about Andre, and then so you're right, and they've got to push some of these young, talented guys to the field. And, I think that's important for Glenn Ellerbe and his group. I think that it's important, for him to show, hey, this offense can still hum right along without Cooper Mays running it, and, without Javonte Spraggins and, without, being able to turn to Dane Davis in a pinch or an Ollie Lane in a pinch or whoever else, Jackson Lampley in a pinch. They've got forced change. And as Hub said, with the receivers, I would tell you that sometimes that's not a bad thing with the offensive line either.
Well, I just wonder if it doesn't, Rob, hyper focus you as a coach. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you get lazy as a coach by any means, but I mean, you go in, you put in a game plan, or you're looking at something every week, and you go, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. We got Cooper, we can do that. He can handle all of this, everything else. And now all of a sudden, wait a minute, we got to teach all this stuff, right? Like, I mean, there's some good to that, but there's also some bad to that. And there's a balance there. But I wonder how much it gets you more dialed in a little bit, but because I've got to get some young guys. There is no option of comfort at this point if I'm Glenn Ellerbe or some of these assistants.
I mean, I think you make a really good point because I think it's human nature. But I'm obviously not a coach. I think I would be the same way. It's just easy to get comfortable with veterans. It's easy to get comfortable with guys that you have confidence that they know what they're going to do. And I think lazy is the wrong word. I don't think coaches are lazy when they do that. I just think they get comfortable, and it's it's tough to get out of that comfort zone and take.
Rick's the same way with basketball, right?
Sure. I mean, it's the same way with any sport. I mean, it's just. I mean, I think coaches, at the end of the day, they want to control what they can control, and having a guy go out there, he may not be a 99 on the talent percentile chart, but what he's going to do. And I just think coaches take a lot of comfort from that, and it's hard to bust out of that.
I mean, look, just 2 years ago, Rob. I mean, Zakai goes down, everybody leaves that team for dead, and yet there they were in the Sweet 16. I mean, like, I thought that was a fantastic coaching job because you were forced to, not rely on your old steady point guard.
I tell you, Coach Barnes, I mean, this is not exactly little apples and oranges, but it's a little bit. It's a little bit of the same thing when you're talking about, playing youth, talking about this current roster. Rick has made some comments to me about, you'd like to have 13 guys, but the benefit of it is when you only have 9 dudes, everybody is locked in because you don't have these 3 or 4 guys on the end of the bench who know they're not going to play and might goof off in practice. I mean, you got 9 guys and 9, and you got just a few guys in the foxhole, and everybody's locked in on the same page. And, again, it's not ideal. You wouldn't draw it up that way, but it can bring out the best in coaches and players.
The flip side is every time somebody pulls a hangnail, you're freaking out because it could be losing a guy too.
Well, I mean, but if you're an offensive lineman, how much different do you feel when you get into those February OTAs or whatever? I don't even know what we supposedly call them now, but when you have all these meetings you're allowed to have in February now. If you're an offensive lineman and you go into that room and there's not 4 guys in there that know the answer to every question, how much more are you paying attention as opposed to
you gotta step up your game?
Hey, I mean, he's going to play. He's got all the answers. Okay, all right, yeah. They're talking in a language that's over my head right now because they've got so much experience. I'm not going to make myself look foolish by not knowing the answer. I'm just going to kind of stay in the shadows and be a little more reserved at this point. That's not the case now. Like if you're Glenn Ellerbe, you're not teaching and you're not developing to a guy who started for 4 years. You're going back and you're developing and teaching to a guy who's played not a lot of football. So I think it's all different, and I don't know that that's necessarily the worst thing in the world at times. I'm not saying you wouldn't rather have an experienced line coming back for your quarterback, because you would, but now you got to go. Now you're really molding somebody, and let's see what happens this spring with these guys. Let's see how much growth that they have. I think it's going to be intriguing to watch.
The security blankets are gone. I mean, Dane Davis is pretty much a part-time starter this year, but think about him playing center last year. Think about Ollie Lane playing center last year. Think about Jerome Carvin playing center in 2021. I mean, again, like all those like security blankets options, just at the center position are gone. Like you got to find somebody new. Cooper Mays is gone. Like you got to find somebody new. And real quick, how much did spring and fall camp, those young offensive linemen just getting beat up by that veteran defensive line, how much are those camp settings going to help this line now moving forward? I mean, they've already learned a lot of harsh lessons. Now they got to, step forward and do some of the beating themselves.
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's Glenn Ellerby. That was his message last spring, right? About how much, I know it's going to be hard for these guys, but they're going to be better for it at the end of spring practice. You just didn't see it because those guys didn't play any kind of snaps other than mop-up duty at the end. So we're going to find out. I don't think we know the answer to that. You hope that this is that it's a group of guys that learned a lot from, young tackles and guards, learned from going against the Easons and the Omari Thomases and Omar Norman Lights of the world. But, I think time will tell. You would think a receiver is going to be better going against these corners, right? We're going to find out. I mean, that's what you're hoping is. You're hoping that you have great competition in spring practice that continues to help the development of guys, not only in spring, but throughout summer as well.